Hello, hello, hello. Another episode from the Chula Vista Heritage Museum and the South Bay Historical Society. I am really excited today, as you know, because of RUTH, Remember Us, the Holocaust, being closed. We went virtual. And as we're interviewing people in our San Diego area, what I'm finding are things that are becoming very worldly. And I got to tell you, I came upon this book that I'm so blessed to have come upon. It is called From Bergen, Belsen to Brooklyn, something that everybody needs to get their hands on, as we are now getting into Holocaust education, Holocaust awareness. This is so, so important. The book was written by Linda Rosenberg and Dr. Solomon Pinczewski. Did I say it correctly?
Yes.
99%?
Well, it's as close as most people come.
Can I call you Dr. Saul?
You can do that. Everybody does.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What an amazing book. An absolute amazing book. What I find, and of course we're going to start from the beginning, but what I find when we get into a really, we'll just say a book, you basically read, and it's like riding a roller coaster, as if you bought the ticket and then you kind of go up the hill. I got to tell you, when you're reading this book, there's no ticket. It's just up the hill, and it just takes you into this amazing ride. Just to give you a heads up, how many times could you read about somebody who was in a concentration camp? Not one, but two people, mother and father. And then when you are in New York, you're trying to make a livelihood, you have the Italian Mafia behind you, protecting you. Saul, so tell me, where were you born?
I was born in RUTH, Germany, after my mother had unfortunately had a number of miscarriages. And I was born at the end of 1948. They were married in 1945 after the war. And
right after the war.
Right after the war. And we were sponsored to come to the United States by my mom's uncle, who had fortunately left Poland prior to the Holocaust. And it was not the most wonderful way to go, because most people who were sponsored by HIAS were able to get housing and were helped, because it's like coming to a new world with no, they didn't speak English. Obviously, I didn't speak English. And they just moved into the apartment with my uncle, and it was very crowded because it was just his apartment. So anyway, so we were in New York.
But you felt the love.
Oh, I always felt the love of my mother. My mother was a very special person.
And your father.
My uncle and my father. My father was a very angry man after the war, understandably so.
Sure.
He lost his two sisters. He lost his mother, his father, his aunts, his uncles. He came from a very large family, and they were pretty well-to-do in the town of Bergen, Poland. And for him to, to be put into the kind of situation he was in, I mean, if someone reads the book, they'll see all the things
Not
he went
if,
through.
When they read the book.
Okay.
When they read the book, because it really is an amazing book.
Yeah,
it is,
you.
and I need to make sure that our librarian will know how to keep it so that as people see the episodes, they can order it. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's finally come to fruition, which I really wanted to do while my mother was still alive. And unfortunately, at the time, I tried to do it the way with publishers doing it. So I went to Simon & Schuster and all the big outfits, and they were all like poo-pooing it. There are so many Holocaust stories. How do we know your story's so wonderful? Read it. Tell me if you like it. Now, they didn't even give it a chance. But fortunately, we came into the era of self-publishing, which I'm so thankful for.
Actually, self-publishing is really great. because you're in control of what you're doing. You put your whole heart into what you're doing. And then when a major publisher comes along, you have the appreciation to know what you want and what you don't want. Let's say if this would have hit Simon & Schuster, then you would have been so excited that they wanted your book that you wouldn't have really looked at what are the professional things that need to be done. It's more than just what's in the pages. It's the fact that what has to happen with those pages. And especially in the Jewish community and the support that you're getting from the second generation group, let's say third generation, and different outlets. This is something now, as we're putting it in Chula Vista, we start here in the South Bay and work our way forward, that you never know when you get that phone call where somebody says, you know something, I saw this episode and I'm interested in knowing how to take it to the next level. You'll have so much knowledge then. The other thing I learned about writing a book, it's not just writing a book, it's like having a baby. It takes a certain period of time. Then when the book comes out, you have to nurture it. You have to be able to feed it. Sometimes you have regrets about things where you could have said, oh, I could have added this photo, this photo. And then have you compared your book? You look at somebody else's book and you think, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. But you know something? This is your book. This is your story. And it's what's in here that's so important. To me, I love this book because for people that are in education, they want to be able to get involved and continue reading it. Some Holocaust books, you pick them up, they read what they're supposed to for school, and they put down the chapter until the next week. With this, you want to keep going. That's what I love about it. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, you know that's interesting because the lady who takes care of my health insurance, she called me up on the phone and she said she read the book and she said, I didn't want to stop. Why did the book end?
That's what I found with this book, that I didn't want it to stop. And you're going to find that as you get into discussion groups, you're going to get an email one day where somebody says, hey, guess what? We're going to be using your book to talk about in our monthly book club. And I think that is going to be the consensus where people are going to say, I didn't want to put it down. And I thoroughly think that this is something that will become part of our literature, not just in San Diego, but probably through the United States when you figure out where it's supposed to go and all that good stuff. Let's talk about the book. Mama, Papa, Holocaust. Wow.
You know, talking about my mom makes me really emotional. She was such a precious lady. She just had a personality that attracted so many people of all faiths, of all colors. She just had a way of inducing people into her heart. And that's how she managed to become like a special person to a man who was a real mafia boss. And, you know, some people would look at him as if he were someone, you know, that you should be negative about. But he felt so sorry for her and the way we lived in the back of the candy store that he just felt that he wasn't going to allow the gangsters that hung out in the area where the store was, which was really an all-Italian neighborhood, and he was not going to allow them to disturb the life that we were trying to develop for ourselves. And he enhanced it by making sure that they didn't do anything. They didn't break any windows, they didn't steal, they didn't do anything. He always was there to make sure. And obviously, you know, he commanded respect. And, You know, it's almost like having your own police department, but it's really not the real police department. But thank God for him.
Can you go into detail as to how your mother met the Italian Mafia?
Okay. When we acquired the candy store, which was a process involved also, because my father at first was working for one of those sweatshops, and they took advantage of him, and he was not a very easy man to get along with the people that were trying to boss him around. And
not only that, he just got out of a camp. It couldn't have been more than 5 years, 6 years.
Oh, less than that.
And all of a sudden, you have these repercussions, things that hit you, and it's like a clock, tick, 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 and then all of a sudden it just, you just have to let it go.
Well, he wasn't the type of guy who would let things go, and that was also a problem with regard to where the candy store was. But in regard to the sweatshop, he looked out for the other survivors that were also there, and he saw how these people who owned the sweatshops took advantage of, like, they were paid by the number of pieces that they produced, and if
right, piecework,
and they would shortchange the people, and my father would count it because he was a bright guy, and numbers were a good thing for him. So he would carry on, and then they said, we've got to get rid of this guy, and of course there was no union at that time, so of course they fired him, and then he had to go into his own business. He had to borrow money from everybody, and he learned about what's the cheapest business to go into, and it was a candy store. So we borrowed from everybody. We paid to get into the candy store, and then when we were in the candy store, they knew a little bit of English, but some guy came into the store with a truckload of shirts, and
wow.
And he said, "Hey, Dave, I'm going to sell these shirts, in your store. Don't worry about it. I'll give you a couple of bucks. Don't worry about it." So my father didn't know, about stealing and all that stuff like that. So, he didn't know what to say, and he didn't want to create a problem because he was running a business. He was trying to get income so that he could pay back the people he borrowed money from, pay the rent, pay the electric, all of his suppliers. So the guy was watching, who was the mafia boss, who they called the Gaon, which in Hebrew means the chief rabbi.
The chief rabbi.
Yeah, they called him. That's what they called him.
We all learned a new word. Okay, Gaon, the chief rabbi. That's great.
So he was the chief rabbi, and he saw what was going on, and he went over to my mother, and he saw the numbers on her arm, and he said to her, I know what you've been through. He must have obviously
right,
seen.
which is what I read. I know what you've been through. Yes.
And I really feel for you, and you can't allow this kind of thing to happen because you're selling stolen merchandise, and you could go to jail. And that's the last thing you want to do when what you've been through. So he said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." Sure enough, he said, "But please be advised that, whatever comes along, please tell me, and I'll make sure that everything will be taken care of." And he sure did.
Can you imagine how your parents, you put children in the world, and then for our parents to tell us what they've been through? You think about milk, chocolate cookies, you know what I'm saying? Life is great, matzo ball soup, Friday Sabbath, lighting candles, look at mom fix her hair, and then deep down inside you realize what's on the arm, what's in the heart, what's in the mind. When I hear you speak, I don't know if you realize it, but Mama and Dad are rising above you. They hear what you're saying.
Well, also, my mother's inspiration her whole life was her grandmother, which is in the book.
Mm-hmm. Miriam, correct?
Miriam.
Mm-hmm.
Miriam would guard over us. Miriam sent him. Miriam is going to take care of everything. That was her faith to get through everything that she went through, from being a teenager and being in concentration camp, walking the death march, getting through to Bergen Belsen, being hit over the head by a capo in Bergen Belsen, having to have surgery after. Fortunately, she was treated by an English doctor, and fortunately the hitting over the head was right before the liberation. Otherwise she would have died with all the other people. It was beschert is the word that we use as Jews, but it was destined for her to survive, and for me to be born, and for my brother to be born, and for this book finally to be published so that people can be aware of what people had gone through, because it's just one of many stories.
It's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster. Personally speaking, do you remember that feeling when all of a sudden you see this little package in the mail, you open it up, and you're holding your book? Wouldn't it have been awesome to know that you could have handed it to your mom?
Oh, that would have been such a pleasure.
All right.
That would have been special. But like you said, she's looking down upon us right now, and she's quelling is the word.
Sure. I'm tearing up a little bit. I'm going to use my mask for this. What I was going to tell you is, of all the things I've done when it came to writing the book, I'll never forget the date. It was in October 2016. Looking at my mom, having it hidden, and saying, "Here. For you, it's easy. You just have to go like this." She knows. And this right now needs to go from here to here so that people read it, understand it. It's, until you've written a book, you never know. Because the tears that were probably at the computer, the tears that were on the iPad, waking up in the middle of the night, does this sound familiar? Coming up with an idea, remembering a story that needs to be written down. It's like labor pains when putting a child into the world. So Linda Rosenberg wrote the book with you, and where is she from?
She's from South Africa. Mm-hmm. She currently lives in San Diego. She teaches at the Jewish Academy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How did the two of you hook up?
I actually was friends with an ophthalmologist, and his wife was an author. And when I was thinking of writing the book, I was looking for help. I had started on my own, but I'm not a prolific writer, but I do have all the facts of the story, and I had put it all down, and I wanted to get someone to help me to obviously edit it and use their English skills, their literature skills, to be able to enhance it.
But you have a sense of humor in the book.
Oh, of course.
Yes, we have Saul in the book, and she didn't take the Saul away when writing.
She did an excellent, brilliant job. She actually met my mother. We started this more than 20 years ago.
Oh.
So Linda knew my mother. She watched the tape of my mother. I went through all of the things with her. I had done cassette tapes in those days of conversations that I had with my mother and my father about everything. And Linda listened to everything, and she would put it down exactly the way it was, and she really did an excellent job. She's a prolific writer. She deserves a lot of credit.
Of all the things that are in the book, what is your favorite thing to read or to talk about? Like when you're doing your tour right now and you're talking in different groups.
The most interesting thing is, just like you said, it's like a climb. It's like you can't take away from any part of it. It's like my mother did so many wonderful things to get there. She climbed and climbed and climbed and finally made it, and like every achievement that I accomplished, she was like so happy that she brought up a son which she thought she'd never be able to have. You know that of course they didn't have any periods while they were in concentration camp.
Absolutely.
And then the miscarriages when she finally did. And she was so thankful that she had a child. She loved me so much. And then the fortunate thing was that like 12 years later she was able to conceive again and have my brother at such a late age. And it's just amazing. And she was able to bring up her two sons in the United States of America. One is a dentist and one is an attorney. And she was just so proud of us. And, if you look at the last picture of the book, it shows...
By the way, this is the dentist, okay? I have to say that.
So if you look at the last page, I mean, you could just see her looking up, the picture of her looking up at her two sons, which made her so proud and what she had accomplished in her life.
I will tell you, by looking at David, your father, he really watched out for everything. From just looking at his photo. He didn't say much, I don't think, but he sure knew how to look. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, my mother was the spokesperson of the family. My father was the person.
He was the ice.
He was the ice, and if something came along that didn't suit him, he would get very angry. And he was a very in Poland. It's interesting at his funeral at Home of Peace, which was here because they're both buried here in Home of Peace.
That's where my parents are.
One of the friends of his from the town he lived in Bergen, Poland, came down from L.A. for the funeral, and the rabbi said, "Does anyone want to speak?" And his name was Mutik Kleiman.
Mutik Kleiman.
Right. Mutik got up and he started talking, and he started talking about where he was from and how he knew David and everything. And the rabbi said to him, "Listen, we only have a short period of time. Would you please minimize your talk?" Mutik said, "You be the rabbi, I'll be the speaker."
Wow.
So he said that when we were in Bergen, I would hide behind David when the Schutzim would come. The Schutzim were, in Yiddish, the Polish Gentiles, and they would want to beat up Jews. And my father would fight them, and they would walk away because he was able to. He was a strong man.
Did your father get along with the local mafia boss?
He did, because he knew that he had to. He knew from just the surroundings that this is what was going on in where he was living, and he knew that it was good for him to have someone to protect him, because otherwise, these gangsters run wild. I mean, we have episodes in there where they did stupid things, where they would take the newspapers, throw them down the sewer, and here it's our livelihood. Now we're going to pay for the newspapers, but we're not going to sell them. I mean, we need somebody that's going to have some kind of discipline for these guys. I mean, if anybody saw the movie Goodfellas.
Oh, that was just on.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
well,
you just saw it.
Okay. Well.
And it made me think of this, because it made me think, oh wow, between Godfather 1, 2, 3, Goodfellas, and Saul coming to talk about the book, this is Mafia Week. This is good.
Well, now I'm going to tell you about Goodfellas and the candy store. The movie, The Goodfellas, and it's an actual true movie. If you recall, Joe Pesci is in a bar in the beginning of the movie.
And do people tell you sound like Joe Pesci?
No. But I'd rather sound like Saul.
I'm sorry, I had to say that.
Unless they want me for a role.
Unless for a role, and then you join the union.
Well, I don't think they're filming right now.
No.
Anyway, this is probably the only filming
But
going
we
on.
are. That's funny.
So anyway, if you recall, Joe Pesci actually dismembers a guy, puts him in a trunk in the beginning of the movie, and he winds up killing him. And the guy is a made man. Okay, that bar was the 19th hole. The 19th hole was right next door to the candy store.
Oh my gosh.
As a little boy, I was the only one that could go into the 19th hole. And
can you imagine?
I knew, all the people involved. It was a meeting place for many of the members of the 5 families, which most people know about. There were 5 Italian families that controlled the mafia.
Yeah.
And that was where the movie Goodfellas, the plot was taken from, was that bar. And that bar was owned by the mafia boss.
Right. What's really amazing is that it's not just a book of going into camp and she survived. What I love about this book is the fact that they were in camps, survived, how they came over and started over as you talked about. But the fact is, they made it. They made it. They made children. You created a legacy. And this, I've read a lot of books, not to say that I haven't, but I have. I see a movie. I do. I see a film because the plot thickens and thickens and thickens. And it's got a good ending. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and we'll see what develops. But I've heard some people advise me to get a screenwriter, but we'll see what comes.
It is like what you said in the book when you talked about the ice skating, the sliding shoes, and that when you were talking about the sliding shoes, what happens if she falls? And what was the answer? It's up to God. That's how this is going to happen with the book. An excellent book for you to read. It's wonderful. I can't say anything more about it. We've been really blessed for Dr. Sol to come visit us here at the Chula Vista Library. And with that, thanks for watching.
Starker vrijwillig, ik de malke doe der melech. Oi, oi, alleen hoop mit meine Augen gesehen, wie Gott hat mir matzelig gewinnt, dem Mesinke ausgegeben, dem Mesinke ausgegeben. Motel schimmen, or mir leid seinen gekommen, greit verseh dem schönsten Tisch, teiere Weinen, teiere Fisch. Oi, mein Tochter, gib mich a Kusch, dem Mesinke ausgegeben, dem Mesinke ausgegeben.